A quiet morning, a world-changing decision. It was a peaceful morning in Montecito, California. The sun gently peeked over the quiet streets lined with tall palm trees. Birds sang softly as the day started, just like any other. Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex, woke up feeling calm and content in the comfort of her beautiful home. She followed her usual routine, savoring the peacefulness that her life had become. Little did she know, this ordinary morning would soon be turned upside down. Across the ocean, in the grand Buckingham Palace, a different kind of moment was unfolding. King Charles III sat at his magnificent desk in a room filled with history. The atmosphere was serious, the air thick with anticipation. Before him lay a document that would change the future of his family. With a steady hand, the king paused for a brief moment, holding the pen tightly. Then, in one decisive motion, he signed the paper, sealing a choice that would forever alter the lives of his grandchildren, Archie and Lilibet. The decision was clear and irreversible. The royal titles of both children would be removed, a choice made in the name of protecting the future of the crown. In that quiet, powerful moment, King Charles believed it was the right path for the monarchy. But on the other side of the world, Meghan's peaceful morning was about to shatter. Before Meghan could even enjoy her first cup of coffee, the news had already spread like wildfire. Whispers in the palace turned into headlines, and soon the world was talking about King Charles's decision. TV screens flashed the news, interrupting regular programming with urgent announcements. The story was everywhere. King Charles had refused to grant royal titles to Archie and Lilibet. Within hours, the internet was flooded with reactions from every corner of the globe. People reacted strongly, some feeling sympathy for Meghan, seeing the decision as unfair and harsh. Others stood by King Charles, believing it was a brave move to protect the monarchy's legacy. Social media became a battleground, with celebrities voicing their support for Meghan, and others defending the king's actions. The story was everywhere, turning what had started as a quiet morning in Montecito into an emotional whirlwind. Meghan, caught in the storm, felt a deep ache in her heart. Her safe haven, once filled with love and comfort, now seemed heavy with sadness. She struggled to make sense of the situation. It wasn't just about royal titles. It was about her children's place in the world, about feeling rejected in a way that words couldn't fully capture. Meanwhile, Prince Harry walked back and forth, wrestling with his emotions. He felt a deep hurt, not just from the decision itself, but from the finality of it all. It was as though the bonds within the family were now more fragile than ever. This was not just another disagreement. It was a decision that would ripple through the years, its impact lasting long after the headlines faded. How did Meghan get to find out about this stunning change? How did she react? Let's find out. A quiet morning shattered. Meghan Markle found comfort in her morning walks. It was a time for peace, a simple routine that helped her feel grounded, but when she returned home that day, she was met with a look from Prince Harry that immediately unsettled her. His face was pale, his expression tight, and a wave of unease washed over her. Without a word, he grabbed the remote and turned on the TV. The sudden voices of news reporters filled the room, speaking urgently about breaking news from London. Meghan froze, her heart racing. On the screen, the words were clear. Archie and Lilibet had lost their royal titles. The room felt suffocating, as if the very air had disappeared. Everything Meghan had worked so hard to build, the peace, the sanctuary, was slipping away. She couldn't grasp what was happening before she could even collect her thoughts. Her phone started ringing off the hook, messages flooding in from friends and family, some offering support, others asking what had happened. She was too overwhelmed to respond, trapped in a whirlwind of emotions. Outside, the quiet of their Montecito neighborhood was shattered. Paparazzi gathered in front of their home, cameras flashing, shouting questions Meghan couldn't bring herself to hear. Prince Harry rushed to close the curtains, trying to shield them from the storm, but he knew there was no escaping it. This wasn't just a scandal, it was a gut-wrenching blow. Meghan sat down on the couch, her hands trembling, struggling to keep her tears at bay. The weight of it all was unbearable. It wasn't about the titles or what the world thought. It was about her children, their place in the world, and how this decision had stripped away their sense of belonging. The pain felt sharp, like a wound that would never heal. It hurt deeply, especially knowing that this choice had come from her own family. The world outside seemed to grow louder and more chaotic, but Meghan felt strangely distant from it all. The news anchors on the TV spoke quickly, their voices blending together as Meghan sat frozen. Her house, once a safe haven, now felt like a cage, filled with sadness and intrusion. Harry gently placed his hand on her shoulder, pulling her back to the moment. She looked up at him, her eyes full of confusion and sorrow. Words didn't seem enough, so he simply held her, both of them surrounded by a silence that spoke more than any words could. Her phone buzzed again, more messages pouring in. As she glanced at the screen, she saw the same shock and sadness reflected in the notes from her closest friends. The weight of the outside world felt crushing. Slowly she stood up and walked down the hall, each step echoing in the empty house. The loneliness she felt was growing stronger, the walls closing in around her. She entered her workspace, hoping to find some peace in the quiet. The garden outside should have brought her comfort, but even in this calm space, serenity seemed out of reach. Sitting down in a chair, Meghan let her tears fall freely. The world outside faded as she thought of Archie and Lilibet. The pain of knowing their futures had been shaped by a decision so heartless was overwhelming. How could she explain this to them? How could she make sense of something so unfair? And what would the public say about it? Stick with us. News hits were suddenly filled with chaos. Photographers swarmed outside, their cameras clicking non-stop, hoping for a glimpse of her. Journalists shouted her name from beyond the windows, their voices cutting through the air like unsettling whispers. Inside, Meghan felt trapped, her once safe sanctuary now overrun by strangers. The sound of her name called out so forcefully left her feeling vulnerable and completely alone. Tears streamed down her face, flowing freely as the weight of the morning's events overwhelmed her. Just as she thought she couldn't bear it anymore, her phone rang. It was Serena Williams, a close friend offering words of comfort. The familiar voice on the other end of the line provided a small measure of relief, reminding Meghan that she wasn't alone in her grief. But even as Serena's soothing words washed over her, the pain remained. The shock of what had just happened felt like an unbearable burden, and Meghan couldn't stop the tears. With a quiet voice, Meghan shared her thoughts with Serena. Speaking about her dreams for Archie and Lilibet, she had always imagined a future where her children would be embraced and loved, a life full of acceptance. But now those dreams had been shattered, leaving her confused and heartbroken. The betrayal she felt from her own family, the same family that had disregarded her children, made her question everything. Meanwhile, back in London, in the busy newsroom of the Daily Mirror, the news broke with the same shock and intensity. Royal correspondent Rebecca Hastings received a call from a trusted source at Buckingham Palace. The news was jaw-dropping. King Charles had made the shocking decision to strip Archie and Lilibet of their royal titles. This decision was final, confirmed and irreversible. Rebecca was stunned. This was a turn no one had expected. It was a momentous, unprecedented move in royal history. As the newsroom buzzed with activity, reporters scrambled to verify the information. Phones rang, keys clicked, and editors shouted orders. Within minutes, the news spread like wildfire across social media. Comments flooded in, people reacted with disbelief, and hashtags began to trend. In the U.S., morning shows broke into their regular programming to cover the unfolding story. News presenters spoke with astonishment as the world watched in real time. Reporters rushed to Buckingham Palace, but the gates were firmly shut, the palace silent and unyielding. Inside, the atmosphere was tense. The royal communications team worked quickly, knowing how crucial it was to craft the right message. Finally, the palace spoke. Did they specify the reason for stripping Meghan's children? Did they specify King Charles? Let's dive in. A speech at Buckingham Palace. In Greenwich, the afternoon air was filled with anticipation as an unexpected event unfolded. Buckingham Palace, which had remained silent for so long, was about to make a statement. Reporters filled the elegant white drawing room. In white, their cameras snapping in excitement as they gathered to hear the news. The room, with its high ceilings and golden accents, was the perfect setting for such an important announcement. Olivia Chambers, the palace's principal communication officer, stood poised in front of the lectern. Her face showed no emotion, but there was a sense of gravity in her presence. As she stepped up to speak, a hush fell over the room. The eyes of the world were on her, waiting for the next words to break the silence. With calm precision, Olivia announced that King Charles III had made a decision. After much careful thought, he had chosen to strip Archie and Lilibet Mountbatten-Windsor of their royal titles, including Prince, Princess, and Royal Highness. The room fell into a deep silence. The only sounds that could be heard were the soft scratching of pens and the click of cameras capturing every moment. Olivia continued, explaining that this decision was not made in haste or out of anger. The king had weighed all aspects carefully, she said, focusing on the long-term well-being of the monarchy. Royal titles, she explained, came with great responsibility, and the king believed that Archie and Lilibet should not bear those burdens at such young ages. His aim was to protect both the future of the crown and the happiness of his grandchildren. Her words were measured and respectful, but they also carried weight. Olivia emphasized that the king's decision was not about emotions. It was about the royal family's future and the public's expectations. By taking this step, King Charles hoped to bring stability and clarity to a situation that had captured worldwide attention. Later in the afternoon, Olivia faced more questions. Reporters were eager to know how this decision would affect Meghan, Harry, and their children. Olivia remained composed, answering that the matter was personal, but stressing that the king's primary concern was always the protection of the crown. Though the palace had presented a carefully crafted explanation, whispers of discontent began to spread. Rumors within the palace suggested that this decision might have been influenced by Meghan and Harry's outspoken criticisms of the royal family. A palace insider speaking in confidence shared that King Charles had been struggling with this choice for a long time. As both a father and a grandfather, it had not been an easy decision, but one he believed was necessary to safeguard the future of the monarchy. Implications on the family. Meghan Markle had dreams of building a peaceful life in Montecito, far away from the chaos of royal duties. She wanted a calm, private space where her family could grow, free from the harsh spotlight. But everything changed on one quiet morning when news from London swept across the world, turning her hopes into heartbreak. King Charles had made the decision. It wasn't just a headline, it was deeply personal. Meghan didn't ask for this attention, but once again she found herself at the center of a global controversy. As the world watched, experts began to weigh in, discussing the emotional impact of such a public decision. Psychologists explained how this kind of public hurt could be especially difficult for someone like Meghan, who had already experienced so much pain and trauma in the past. For Archie and Lilibet, the decision was a turning point. Even though they were so young, the future suddenly seemed uncertain. Would they grow up knowing the royal world, or would they create their own path, free from the weight of titles and royal expectations? Experts debated whether the children might feel disconnected from a part of themselves, or if they would be able to embrace this new chance for independence. Meanwhile, in London, King Charles stayed quiet. Buckingham Palace aides described him as calm, even as rumors swirled. Behind closed doors, sources hinted at the ongoing tension between him and Prince Harry, a tension that had been building for months and finally erupted into the world's view. Back in Montecito, Meghan's emotions shifted from shock to deep sorrow. She cried, but the pain didn't fade. It was impossible to forget the sting of seeing her children's names removed from the royal records. As she wiped her tears, the sadness remained in her eyes, a sorrow not just for the lost titles, but for the future she had hoped for them, a future filled with acceptance, love, and protection. Throughout the day, people spoke about the decision. Media outlets analyzed every angle, and royal historians searched for a moment in history when something like this had happened before. But there was nothing. No grandparent had ever stripped their grandchildren of royal titles. It was uncharted territory, leaving many to wonder if this was just another chapter in the Sussex family saga, or if it marked a new era for the monarchy. For Meghan, the pain deepened as she read the royal statement. It felt like an accusation, like she and Harry had failed in their responsibilities. It was as though the royal family was scolding them, and it left Meghan feeling exposed. Her once peaceful home, where she had dreamed of raising her children in privacy, had become a place of emotional turmoil. The clash between the life they wanted and the royal expectations they were bound to was overwhelming. As the day wore on, the cameras kept rolling, and Meghan sat quietly, her face still swollen from crying. Her eyes stared out toward the distant hills, trying to find some peace in the silence. But the reality of what had just happened began to sink in. This moment had changed everything, but one question lingered. Why? Why would King Charles do this now? Stick with us. Why did King Charles do it? Everywhere you looked, people were talking. What made King Charles take such a bold and surprising step? Was it about protecting royal traditions? Or had old family troubles and personal pain finally pushed him too far? No one could say for sure, but everyone had an opinion. Royal experts and historians spoke up quickly. They reminded everyone that royal families usually settle personal matters quietly, behind closed doors. Public statements like this one about family were almost unheard of. But this time the message was loud and clear. There was no room for guessing or confusion. Some people believed it was payback. Ever since Prince Harry and Meghan stepped away from their royal duties, the tension inside the family had been impossible to ignore. Public interviews, bold comments, and uncomfortable events all added to the strain. To some, this decision felt like the king drawing a line, showing his disapproval in the strongest way possible. Others thought it was a way to protect the monarchy itself. Maybe King Charles believed that setting firm rules now would help prevent bigger problems later. If clear boundaries weren't made, perhaps the royal family could face even more trouble in the future. No matter the reason, one thing was certain. The decision had forever changed the way people saw the unity of the royal family. As the morning turned to afternoon, news channels and social media filled with debates. Some said the king was simply doing his duty, standing strong for the good of the monarchy. Others believed his heart had guided him more than people realized. Could it be that Harry and Meghan's actions had hurt him deeply in ways the public would never truly know? In his own way, the king was showing that every choice comes with consequences, even for a family as famous as his. Later that day, King Charles attended a charity event. It was meant to be a cheerful and unrelated visit, but one brave reporter couldn't resist asking him about the shocking decision. The king answered calmly, his voice steady. He admitted that these choices are never easy, but sometimes they are necessary. He didn't say much, but his words carried weight. It was clear he believed in what he had done. People reacted in different ways. Some praised him for standing firm and protecting the royal family's traditions. Others were heartbroken, calling the decision cruel and unfair. Meghan's supporters especially spoke out online, sharing their sadness and frustration. It was easy to see that the king's choice had not only divided his own family, it had split public opinion as well. A well-known historian appeared on a popular TV show that evening, saying this kind of thing had barely happened in royal history. Sure, titles had been quietly taken away before, but never like this. Never so openly. Never from a king's own grandchildren. It made many wonder what was truly going on behind the palace walls. What did Harry have to say in the matter? Let's look at that. Heartbreak behind closed doors. Inside their quiet home, the air felt heavy with sadness. Meghan and Harry's world had been turned upside down, and no one knew what to say or do. Their team of advisors gathered quickly, trying to decide the best next step. Some thought it would be wise for them to speak out, to tell the world how hurt they were. Others felt it was better to stay silent, let the storm pass and speak when their hearts were steady. But in the middle of all the noise, Meghan and Harry chose silence. The pain was too fresh, the wounds too deep. Harry couldn't sit still. Inside their peaceful house, he paced back and forth, his mind racing with anger and heartbreak. From behind a closed door, he could hear Meghan's soft, broken cries. Every sob cut through him. He felt helpless, unable to take away her pain. And that helplessness hurt more than anything. Finally, he couldn't bear it any longer. Gently, he tapped on the door and whispered, "Meg?" Her voice, shaky with tears, called back to him. When he opened the door, he found her sitting by the window, looking so small and fragile. Her face was wet with tears, and her eyes were filled with sorrow. Without a word, Harry rushed to her side, knelt down and took her hand in his. There were no words strong enough to fix what had happened, but he wanted her to feel his presence, his love, and his silent promise that she wouldn't face this pain alone. They sat together in quiet sadness, holding on to each other. Harry's heart ached with guilt. He blamed himself for not protecting their family better. Meghan, her voice trembling, told him it wasn't his fault. Deep down, though, neither of them understood how their lives had come to this, how everything they tried to protect had fallen apart so publicly. Outside their home, the once peaceful streets of Montecito had changed overnight. News vans, flashing cameras, and curious strangers crowded the area. Neighbors who loved their quiet and private lives suddenly found themselves in the middle of a media storm. One neighbor, Evelyn Morrison, spoke for everyone. She had lived there for years and knew the true meaning of peace. Evelyn felt heartbreak for Meghan, saying no mother should have to suffer like that, especially not with cameras following her every move. She called it unfair, cruel even, and said the entire neighborhood was standing by Meghan, hoping to offer a little comfort in such a painful time. The world reacts to Meghan's heartbreak. The royal palace tried its best to make King Charles's decision look calm, fair, and necessary, but instead of ending people's curiosity, it made everyone talk even more. The moment the news broke, royal experts, reporters, and ordinary people everywhere began asking one big question: why now? The carefully chosen words in the announcement talked about duty and responsibility, but people weren't satisfied. They wanted to know the real reason. Was it truly about protecting the royal family's image, or was it something more personal? Perhaps a punishment for Meghan and Harry stepping away from royal life. On the news, Dr. Annabelle Sheridan, a well-known historian, explained that royal titles are rarely taken away. It usually happens only when the monarchy feels threatened. She believed that maybe Meghan and Harry's actions over the years had gone too far for the royal family to ignore. Meanwhile, across the ocean in California, American news stations were buzzing too. Many people in the U.S. saw it differently. They thought it wasn't just a royal rule being followed, but a cold message to Meghan and Harry, a reminder of what happens when you break royal traditions. As the day went on, curiosity only grew stronger. Reporters flooded Buckingham Palace with questions. Was this decision final? Could it be changed? Rumors swirled. Some people believed Prince William had a hand in it. Others thought King Charles was reacting to growing criticism about Meghan and Harry's interviews and public appearances. Social media lit up like a Christmas tree. On Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram, people shared their opinions. Some blamed King Charles for being too harsh. Others supported him, saying he was doing what had to be done to protect the crown. The palace even allowed a respected reporter, Eleanor Kingsley, to speak with royal staff. They told her the king felt deeply sorry for hurting his family, but believed it was the only way to protect the monarchy's name. Newsrooms around the world were in a frenzy. Reporters searched for hidden meanings and possible clues about what would happen next. Tabloid headlines were dramatic and bold. One even claimed Meghan had confronted King Charles. Others showed sad pictures and emotional quotes. BBC's Jonathan Maitland said no king or queen had ever made such a public decision against their own grandchildren before. In the U.S., morning shows like Today and Good Morning America changed their topics instantly. The hosts spoke about Meghan as a mother, imagining how painful it must feel to watch your children lose something so personal and special. Royal expert Claudia Kensington pointed out how cold the royal family seemed, suggesting Meghan had always felt like an outsider, and now the doors had slammed shut for good. Back in Montecito, Meghan and Harry's peaceful neighborhood turned into a circus. Reporters and news vans lined the streets. One neighbor, Mr. Torres, said it made him uneasy to see their quiet town become a global story. City officials even held a meeting to figure out how to manage the chaos. Everywhere you looked, debate shows were buzzing. CNN's Anderson Cooper hosted a lively discussion. Some experts said King Charles was acting out of duty, while others thought it was about payback. Historians claimed the decision sent a clear message about royal rules, but psychologists worried about the lasting effect it might have on Harry and Meghan's children. Even in places like Australia, Canada, and South Africa, people talked about it on TV. Some called the royal family cold and distant, while others said this was the cost of choosing a different path. Social media influencers across Africa and Asia reminded everyone of how Meghan had faced unfair treatment from the start and how history often repeated itself. Within hours, online articles gathered millions of views. YouTube was flooded with videos offering predictions and behind-the-scenes gossip. Almost every evening, news show made the royal scandal their top story. CBS's Norah O'Donnell called it one of the biggest royal dramas in years, focusing on Meghan's pain and how alone she must have felt. Quiet whispers behind palace walls. While the world outside was busy with headlines and endless conversations, a very different scene was unfolding inside the tall, quiet walls of the royal palace. Behind those grand doors in London, soft whispers filled the halls as the people closest to the royals tried to make sense of what had just happened. The news had spread like wildfire, much faster than anyone expected. Even though there had been small warnings that something was coming, no one imagined it would turn into such a storm. Not even King Charles's closest advisors saw it coming like this. They knew his decision would cause a stir, but not this much. Within hours, public anger and curiosity grew bigger and louder, leaving many inside the palace deeply unsettled. Some royal staff were secretly shocked. They thought the king might have been ready for a little bit of fuss, but certainly not the flood of attention and emotion that followed. Each hour seemed heavier than the last, as it became clear this wasn't just another royal family disagreement. It was something bigger, something important. It was a moment that would be remembered, not just by the family, but by people all around the world. Inside the royal circle, things grew tense. Those close to Prince William and Princess Catherine were said to be very worried. Though neither William nor Catherine spoke publicly, people whispered that they were troubled by how badly things were going. The criticism was stronger than anyone had guessed, and the newspapers just wouldn't stop. A heavy feeling hung in the air. People inside the palace chose their words carefully. Conversations became shorter. Smiles faded. Nobody wanted to say too much. It felt like everyone was waiting, unsure of what would happen next. Meanwhile, King Charles stayed quiet. He refused to add anything more to the short message the palace had released earlier. His silence meant different things to different people. Some thought he was cold and uncaring. Others believed he was being smart, letting the storm calm down before speaking again. Across newspapers and TV screens, experts debated whether the king was being heartless or simply doing what needed to be done. What do you think? How would Harry try to counter this verdict? Share your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Before you go, be sure to click on the video shown on your screen.